This is Lisa, the Director of Operations at People's Harm Reduction Alliance. Just here to break off some knowledge while I'm doing outreach, I guess. A little bit of a different presentation here because COVID. I am your friendly neighborhood Arab needle fairy. Yeah, that doesn't have a good holder for my phone. Yeah, so I am here to talk about consumption rooms, the elusive consumption room / safe injection site. Everyone's favorite subject. Yes. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I was talking to a friend earlier today about the bars being closed, and we were joking about how people were drinking more now that the bars were closed. Of course, they're still closed here in Seattle because people believe in science here. So, yeah, so it was interesting because people buying more alcohol and pouring their own drinks in their houses and not really knowing how to do it. And we were talking about how funny it is, and I was like, isn't it interesting that, you know, at least once a week, most of us in a normal world would go to a safe consumption site to unwind after work or to socialize or to go on a date, whatever. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, you know, because what do you go to a bar for? You're there to consume alcohol, usually to de-stress. You know what you're going to get when you go there. And sorry, commercials. Yeah, so you know usually what you're gonna get when you go there and somebody pours you a drink. You know that you're gonna get something that's, you know, not too awfully strong sometimes, unless you know the bartender. And you know, it's going to be semi-regulated. You know that the alcohol isn't gonna make you go blind or, you know, cause some sort of nightmarish thing to happen to you, usually. Does if you drink too much, I suppose. But you know, then there's also the fact that when you go, I'm trying to park here, sorry. Whew, that is a close cut. Oh, when you go, oh, okay. Yeah, when you go to a bar, they're going to regulate your intoxication levels as well. You know, so you let's try this one more time with the parking. Yeah. So you basically go in, and if you are too drunk, well, trying to park and do this video is hard. It's very last minute. Yeah, so if you go in and say you're already drunk, that's one thing that can happen. That's a fun thing that can happen. They won't even serve you, you know. So you go in and you have, you know, 3 or 4 drinks. And boom, you're wasted because you're a lightweight. Or say you have 7 drinks. Everyone's different, you know. And then you try to get another one and you're slurring and you can't walk straight and that sort of thing. You know, the bartender's not going to serve you. And you're like, no, I don't think so. You've had enough. These are all obviously harm reduction measures, as we all know. You know, and I think it's really interesting that the safe injection site or the consumption room is such a hot topic, and it's so taboo. Yet, I've had many conversations about safe injection sites and consumption rooms inside of consumption spaces for alcohol, which is just interesting to me. So I don't know. It's like, what more can you say about safe injection sites or consumption rooms? I feel like everything's been said, It's one of those things that is really hard to say new things about. But if you don't know what they are, if you're new to the game, it's basically a space where people would go to use illicit substances, like, mostly to inject opiates is what people generally think of, but plenty of them in Canada where you can also smoke, stimulants or even opiates, things like that. People are there to sort of make sure you're doing okay. They have, drug testing equipment that's actually, a little bit more effective than like fentanyl test strips and stuff like that. They can do all of that before you ingest your substance, which is really, I think an important, overdose deterrent when it comes to consumption rooms or safe injection sites, as they're known, more so, I guess, around the nation. I think it's interesting because, as we all know, there haven't been any deaths, I believe, at the consumption sites close to the Northwest where I'm at right now, so Vancouver, BC, because of, all of these things that they can do. I mean, there's obviously they're going to have Narcan there. They're going to have people who can administer Narcan. They're going to have people who can do rescue breathing. They're going to have oxygen machines. They're going to have all these things that they can do. If somebody were to have a little bit too much, and need some help. So I think, I don't know. It's interesting how people have this giant issue with it. It's just saves lives. I think it was last year I was in Montreal and I visited a couple safe injection sites, and one of the things they were saying was that they rarely use Narcan. They were like, we use the oxygen machine most of the time. We just monitor people's oxygen levels with a monitor on their finger while they're chilling out after they've ingested whatever. And then, if they start to fall out or if their oxygen level will go below a certain point, they'll just put them on oxygen because, it's really all you need when you're overdosing of an opiate. And so, they won't need to use Narcan. So it's like it's a less stressful to your body way to bring somebody out of overdose, which is pretty interesting. They were saying the only time they really use Narcan is when people would overdose across the street in the park. So that was one of those things that was pretty interesting. So, I mean, we all know that the data is there to support safe injection sites or consumption rooms. It's just, people don't like drug users and they don't like drugs, even though everybody does drugs, because it's this idea, it's this fear, it's this stigma, and that sort of thing. And I think a lot of us also know that, there's plenty of places you can go to ingest all kinds of things, that are safe spaces, even though they're not officially consumption rooms or whatever. There's people there who know what they're doing. There's safe use equipment, all these sorts of things. And drug users have been taking care of each other forever because we had to. So, it makes sense that these places would already exist on the down low sort of thing, but not legally here, obviously, we know that. The current state of the safe injection site / consumption room, as we call it here, or safe consumption site, there's a couple different names, is, I think it's different if you ask different people. From my standpoint, as somebody who does operations at the largest syringe exchange program in the city, and also does direct outreach to it seems like it's just a stalemate for me. I mean, I know there's a lot of people talking all the time in meetings and having conversations, and everybody wants to grab the money. But it's at a stalemate, and it's at a stalemate because our city council voted to open 2 consumption sites in Seattle, one in the city and one outside the city, but in King County. And that's when everybody lost their minds. The little towns all had these votes where they made safe consumption sites illegal in their little townships. They were afraid we were going to come and put one right in the middle of some little 2,000 person town or some ridiculousness like that. And the people who were in city council then, and some of them who are still now in Seattle, do what they usually do. Start out hard and are all for it and for the progressive change, and then as soon as the big money comes out with their worries and their concerns, they back off and they lose their spines and they backpedal all day long, and then it just turns into a stalemate that goes on for years and years. I think it's been, I don't know, 3 or 4 years since they voted that they were going to put consumption rooms in here, and they still haven't. There's absolutely no sign of that happening. There's all kinds of excuses that have been thrown around, of course, but I think, those of us who know that probably we're not going to see that for a very long time. Not because of not wanting to actually do anything for a lot of us, but that also takes funds and that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, so I know that a lot of places, this is the same thing that's happened, is city councils and whatnot have, even governors have, said that they were going to implement safe injection sites or consumption rooms and just haven't, or there's always something that happens, which is interesting, I don't know. I'm hoping. There's been a lot of interesting stuff that's happened during COVID, as I'm sure you all know. A lot of stuff that's happened with telemedicine, a lot of stuff that's happened with progression of being able of methadone take homes, like in our city. They were letting people take home, weeks on end of methadone, the height of COVID shutdown, though we are currently still partially shut down in our city. So those things are still happening there. You can have your Suboxone intake on the phone. It doesn't even have to be telemedicine. So a lot of things are becoming really low barrier. Meanwhile, the libraries, all these places that used to be open for folks who were unsheltered and living outside to use for different things. And also, a lot of libraries here carry Narcan. They all know how to administer it, because that's kind of the last place that people who live outside can seek shelter and aren't, screamed at or driven out with anger. So they've reversed many overdoses. Kind of funny, because it's the unofficial basically the unofficial consumption room is the library bathroom of every library. And it's not because they like implemented that, it's just that, you know, that's what happens. And all of the places that people could use public bathrooms shut them down, or the places just shut down, and that sort of thing. So basically, public restrooms, porta potties, those places become, your safe injection sites when you don't have alternatives, which, as we all know, aren't sanitary and aren't the best places to be. And also you're using alone, which is dangerous, especially with the presence of fentanyl and stronger drugs, and since COVID, weirder drugs, that have all kinds of wild stuff going on with them. Yeah, so it's interesting that people find it acceptable for folks to be dying on the streets and not getting the care that they need or the support they need, just because they have some sort of ethical problem with a place where people can actually go inside and get support and help if they need it, or actually just be able to go in and, get well in a healthy environment that's clean and sterile, that they're not going to get sick, and they can have somebody look at their abscess, or they can not get abscesses because they have all the proper equipment and all of the people there to help them with vein care and these, so there's just, the possibilities are endless. We all know this, but I think it's like, another talk on safe injection sites, another talk on consumptioners. We all know that we need these. I think it's time to start talking about like at what point do we say, you know what, who cares what people who aren't going to access these places think about it? They're not going to use it. They're going to utilize it. They obviously don't care about drug users. They never have. They don't care about unsheltered people. They never have. They're not going to somehow all of a sudden, through some large campaign to educate them, like be like, oh, well, I've changed my mind and I'm all about consumption rooms now. Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. So at what point do we just say, who cares what they think, and just do it? I don't know. I think a lot of people are that's where they're at. I don't know. I guess this is less a talk about something new and more of a conversation starter, starting new conversations about how to go about getting places for our folks to have support and use safely. I feel like the conversation has landed in these large groups of official people who don't have any lived experience. They don't know anything about anything. And now they all of a sudden have control over all of the safe injection sites and all the consumption room stuff. And I just think, no, we need to take that back. That's where I'm at. I think it's ridiculous that, I can't even access, really what's going on in my city with that. That's like, that's some people with higher educations and, lots of letters after their name. They don't want to hear from people who actually, use drugs or, are around people who use drugs or anything like that. They just want to continue to talk about how they want, all this input for folks, but they don't, not really. It's a pretty unwelcoming atmosphere, and I'm sure a lot of you have been at those tables many times. I know I have. So yeah, I guess, I think I think we should just do this. I don't see why we need to go through all of these channels. We're all radicals if we're involved in harm reduction anyway, and we're used to getting yelled at. We're used to getting called all kinds of things. So, I think the conversation just needs to shift. That's my opinion on it. And I guess this is just an opinion piece then. But since I'm, doing a last minute cover, in a last minute talk on this. I mean, I guess it just is more like a dear Abby moment, dear Lisa moment. I don't know. Anyway, would love to answer any questions y'all have, or just have a conversation, really. I think that would be pretty amazing. You know, just curious of how many of you have had the same struggles, you know, in your cities with this. Anyway, I'm home now, done with outreach, so I'm gonna go inside, and I'm gonna have a glass of wine, actually. So I'm gonna go upstairs and do some substances, I guess, out of a bottle, because I guess that's somehow safe. That's the legal one. It's very strange. Anyway, I'm yammering now, so I'm gonna sign off. This is Lisa Althaki. I'm signing off. So yeah, stay safe. Bye.